Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu, and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at BT08, and BT08 offers us lots of new and powerful cards to build and iterate on some new and existing decks. And today's deck I'm going to be taking a look at is going to be a brand new iteration on green hybrids. So I think hybrids as a whole is still really strong because the core concept of playing lots of tamers that the opponent doesn't really have a whole lot of interaction with, and sitting on those tamers to accrue lots of value and use those tamers to then go up the chain relatively quickly is still strong, and green hybrids is no exception to that rule, with a lot of new tools that BT08 added to help flesh out the deck and all of its different possibilities and routes that you could play it with. So green hybrids at the end of the day is still just going to be doing your classic green thing on trying to get your opponent's Digimon to be suspended, then beat up the Digimon for various different benefits with a whole bunch of new cards to help us achieve that goal. So without further ado, onto the deck profile. Starting off with the Digitama, I'm going to be running one copy of Argomon. So this is the 5th Digitama slot of the deck. It doesn't necessarily have to be Argomon if you don't want it to be. I just like Argomon just because he's going to be helping us gain some extra memory, and green can really do a lot of things with very little memory, making Argomon really appealing because it allows you to do more things. So his inheritable ability states that during your turn, when this Digimon becomes unsuspended during your unsuspend phase, then you get to gain 1 memory to make more powerful plays possible. And then the main Digitama of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Pinamon. So Pinamon is going to be the primary draw engine for the deck. Green doesn't necessarily have a whole lot of ways of drawing cards, so that just makes Pinamon even more appealing. Its inheritable ability states that when attacking once per turn, when we use one of our Digimon to attack into one of the opponent's Digimon, then we get to draw a card. So it's just a nice, easy way to help us filter through our deck to try to make it as consistent as it possibly can be for doing something green is already wanting to do. Next, on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Terriermon. So Terriermon is still a fantastic floodgate to try to stop the opponent's memory manipulating shenanigans. So during all turns, your opponent can't gain memory except by tamer effects, so they're going to have to deal with Terriermon before they're going to be able to make some of their more powerful plays possible. But we're also running Terriermon just because we need him for one of our other cards, which I'll get into later, that makes him even better. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Betamon. So Betamon is going to be one of the search engines for the deck, just because he has the on-play ability where we get to reveal the top 3 cards of our deck, add 1 green level 4 Digimon and 1 green tamer from among them into our hand, and then the rest go to the bottom. So he's kind of acting similar to Shivamon and Flamemon from BT04 for what green is trying to do, on trying to make our deck as consistent as it possibly can be. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Bokomon. So Bokomon is really powerful in green hybrids, more specifically because of the specific setups that we have to actually make a Bokomon gain us additional memory. So he is also going to be acting as a really good search tool, where he has the on-play ability where we get to reveal the top 5 cards of our deck, then we get to add 1 Digimon with hybrid or 10 warriors in its trait, and 1 tamer card from among them into our hand, and then the rest go to the bottom. So he has lots of possible targets for us to search out and dig for, making him really appealing for the deck. Then the ability that we're trying to take advantage of the most compared to all of the other hybrid decks is the fact that he has this nice ability where during your turn, once per turn, when one of your tamers digivolves into a Digimon, then we get to gain 2 memory, and JP having the ability to reduce our Digivolution cost just means that he's actually going to be helping us gain memory to make more powerful plays just for using Bokomon. And speaking of our hybrids to digivolve into, next I'm going to be running 4 copies of Beetlemon. So Beetlemon is a really good card just because of the different ways that we could use him. We don't necessarily always have to digivolve him on top of a tamer if we don't need to, but he does have that ability where he could digivolve on top of a green tamer as if it was a level 3 Digimon. So sometimes we might want to actually digivolve him on top of a Betamon just to try to get some more draws in and more searches in, just because he's also another searching tool for the deck, where we get to reveal the top 5 cards of our deck and add 1 card with hybrid in its traits and 1 JP from among them into our hand, and then the rest go to the bottom. So we have even more ways to try to dig out our parts and pieces to make sure that we find what we need to see. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of MetalKabuterimon. So MetalKabuterimon is another hybrid for us to use, and this is a card that has insane levels of flexibility because of all of the different evolution methods. So we could Digivolve him for 3 on top of a level 3, which I really wouldn't recommend, but you could if you wanted to. Or we could Digivolve him on top of a green tamer for 2, which is pretty average compared to a lot of other level 4s in the game. We could Digivolve him for 1 on top of a level 4. Obviously, the best level 4 to Digivolve him on top of is going to be Beetlemon, just so we could get his when Digivolving ability off, to be able to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon with 6000 DP or less, as long as we Digivolved him on top of either a JP or a hybrid. So this ability just allows us to easily try to control the opponent's field. And speaking of easy ways to control the field, the last champion of the deck is going to be 3 copies of Rapidmon. So Rapidmon is ordinarily a really expensive card to Digivolve into, costing 4 to Digivolve off of a level 3 green or yellow Digimon. We're not really running any yellow cards and we don't need to run any yellow cards, but he just naturally fits inside of green because he also has the alternative evolution cost where we could Digivolve him for 3 on top of a Terriermon, which we're already running. So that just makes Rapidmon really, really appealing for the deck, on top of the fact that he is going to be a sticky body thanks to the armor purge ability. So if he would get deleted, he's not, and then we basically Digivolve him into whatever was underneath him, which is really strong because that ideally is going to be a Terriermon to act as a floodgate to stop the opponent's actions, or at least try to limit some of them. Then, on top of all of that, the big reason why we're playing Rapidmon is because he has this nice wind Digivolving ability, where we get to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon for each tamer we have in play. Well, we're a hybrid-based deck, we're playing a decent chunk of tamers, so he's going to have a really powerful ability to suspend multiple Digimon down. And then the reward for doing that is we get to choose up to 3 of the opponent's suspended Digimon and minus 5000 DP to them, so it's going to be easier for our Digimon to beat up their Digimon. He himself already, off of his own ability, can already beat up to 10k and survive, 11k, and then Armor Purge will have to trigger, so it's just a very powerful control tool for the deck to adopt. Next, on to the level 5s, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Argomon. So Argomon level 5 from BT02 is still just that good of a card that it's limited to 1, making us want to run it because it's essentially a free evolution. So ordinarily it does have an evolution cost of 3 for Digivolving on top of a level 4, but he has the Digisorption ability where we get to suspend one of our Digimon, including himself if we're Digivolving into him, to reduce his evolution cost by 3, making him 0 to Evo. Then he has a nice inheritable ability where when attacking we get to play 1 level 3 green Digimon from our hand suspended without paying its memory cost, but he's in the deck just because he's a free evolution. And speaking of free evolutions, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Blossomon for basically the exact same reasons as I was running Argomon level 5, except Blossomon doesn't have an inheritable ability. And then the last ultimate of the deck is going to be 4 copies of RhinoKabuterimon. So even though RhinoKabuterimon isn't free, he's still a really cheap level 5 to Digivolve into because of his ability, where when a Digimon with a tamer in its source would Digivolve it into this Digimon from our hand, we could reduce its memory cost by 2, making it 1 to Evo on top of any of our tamer stacks, which ideally we're going to use with our hybrids. Then the reward for using him is he actually allows us to easily go into our level 6s, because of his when attacking ability. If a card with hybrid or insectoid in its traits is in this Digimon's Digivolution source, then this Digimon can Digivolve into a Digimon with insectoid or 10 warriors in its traits from our hand by only paying 3, which is really good because the majority of our evolutions outside of this ability are going to be a little bit on the more expensive side, so he just helps us not only act as a really strong level 5 Digimon to go up into cheaply and efficiently, but being able to get out our level 6s even easier is very, very good. And we do have some really strong level 6s that we want to be using. So as far as the level 6s go, I'm going to be running 1 copy of AncientTroymon just because he could still be very, very annoying for decks that want to multi-attack. So he has this nice ability where during the opponent's turn, when an opponent's Digimon attacks, we get to suspend up to 2 of their Digimon without blocker. So it just turns off a lot of the opponent's potential aggro if they're not playing decks that want to taper their attacks out of nowhere. Then on top of that, he has a nice on-delete ability where he basically replaces himself with a level 4 or lower green Digimon with hybrid in its traits for free, so it's just helping us keep up the pressure while taking some pressure off of us. And then as far as the main aggro card of the deck for our big boss monster level 6, I'm going to be running 3 copies of AncientBeetlemon just because he's going to be where the majority of our damage is coming from. So he has this nice ability where during your turn, once per turn, when one of your Digimon with 10 warriors or hybrids in its traits deletes an opponent's Digimon by battle and yours survives, then we get to trash the top card of the opponent's security stack. So not only do we have the ability to add piercing thanks to our tamer, but just for our Digimon attacking into the opponent's Digimon, we get to burn the opponent to try to avoid certain threats in the opponent's security. Then on top of that, similar to AncientTroymon, he does have an on-delete ability to replace himself with another level 4 or lower green hybrid. And then the last level 6 of the deck is going to be 1 copy of Shivamon. So Shivamon isn't necessarily a 10 warriors, but it is an insectoid for us to combo with our RhinoKabuterimon with. But if we're using any of our other level 5s to use basically for free with the Digisorption ability, Shivamon is absolutely insane for us to use on the field, just because he has this nice ability where during the opponent's turn, while all of your Digimon are suspended, your opponent can't use options. Well, if he's the only Digimon on the field that's suspended, then it just locks the opponent out of utilizing their options to turn off a lot of possible plays that they could be thinking about. Then on top of that, he has a nice ability where during your turn, when this Digimon unsuspends during your unsuspend phase, then we get to trash the top card of the opponent's security stack, acting as some really good passive burn. So the way Shivamon wants to be played and the way you want to kind of play this deck is to suspend the opponent's Digimon down, beat up their Digimon, control their field, and then Shivamon will just passively turn off the opponent's options and start burning them all at the same time. But speaking of ways to suspend the opponent's Digimon down, next onto the options, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Śānti. So Śānti is another really good option at trying to suspend the opponent's Digimon down. You could just run Thunder Laser instead, but I feel like just because we're not 110% pure hybrids, Śānti is just a little bit of a better card, especially in combination with Shivamon. So what this card is doing is it has the main ability where we get to suspend one of our Digimon down to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon or Tamers. So it gives us a little bit extra flexibility on our targets that we could be suspending. Then the opponent's card that's suspended with this effect can't unsuspend until the end of their next turn. So it just helps lock the opponent's Digimon down, so that way we could use our Digimon to figure out a way to beat up theirs. Then it has the nice security ability to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon or Tamers to act as a really good security threat. And then the last option of the deck is kind of a flex spot. It doesn't necessarily have to be Green Memory Boost, but I do like the consistency that Green Memory Boost adds. So it has the nice ability where we get to reveal the top 4 cards of our deck, add a green Digimon from among them into our hand, and then the rest go to the bottom. To then put this in the battle area for its secondary main ability of Delay to gain 2 memory at a later turn. So it's just helping us fix our memory to make more powerful plays while digging through our deck to try to find our parts and pieces that we're looking for. Then the security ability at worst just puts it into the battle area so we could use the Delay ability at a later turn. And then as far as our Tamer lineup goes, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Mimi. So this is the BT01 version of Mimi, and this is going to be the deck's dedicated memory fixer, so if we ever have less than 3 memory, she'll just always hard set us to 3. This is really important because it makes Bokomon even more powerful because we could hard play Bokomon, and then if we have a JP on our field, Digivolve our JP into any of our hybrids for basically gaining us a memory, utilizing JP's ability, which I'll get into in just a moment, to continue the pressure by Digivolving into a RhinoKabuterimon to swing and be able to Digivolve into a level 6 all in one turn. Then on top of that, she also has a really good ability herself, where if we have a level 5 or higher green Digimon in play, which again, getting up into isn't that hard in the deck, we get to suspend this Tamer to basically get another raising phase, because we could turbo out our eggs for more card draw, or we could move our eggs into the battle area, so that way they could attack right away and apply lots of additional pressure onto the opponent. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of JP. So JP is kind of the glue on how the deck wants to function because he's just an absolutely insane tamer. So he does have the ability where we could play him for free off of our security like all of the other tamers. Then the main appeal of this card is the fact that we get to Digivolve him into a green hybrid for basically 1 less than your average card. So it allows us to easily climb our stages with, which is the whole point of how green generally wants to play. And then the reward for utilizing JP with our hybrids is he gives our hybrids, or whatever Digimon we manage to put him under, the piercing ability to deal damage to the opponent by attacking into their Digimon. So it's just a good tamer to use overall, with lots of different ways that we have to search him out. And then the last tamer of the deck is going to be 3 copies of Izzy. So this is the starter deck Izzy, and we're utilizing this card just because we're already trying to suspend the opponent's Digimon, and he rewards us with a memory back when we suspend the opponent's Digimon. So during your turn, when one of your opponent's Digimon becomes suspended, then we get to suspend this tamer to gain a memory to make those cards more efficient to use, which we could use in combination with Rapidmon to make them cost 3 or potentially 2 if we Digivolve them on top of Terrier. Samādhi makes it free to use. We could use them in combination with MetalKabuterimon. So there's just a lot of good synergy that this tamer has, on top of being a very cheap and efficient tamer to hard play. And then we do just have lots of various other tech and tools that we could think about utilizing in the deck depending on the type of direction that you're going for. So if you do want to try to play a little bit more into the insectoid-based synergies, just because we already like some of what Green is trying to do on its own, then we could think about running Tentomon to try to make the cost of digivolving into our Digimon a little bit easier. Then, if you wanted to, we could also run the starter deck Tentomon, just because it's another really good, easy, generic way at trying to add cards into our hand. Then, we also do have some other green hybrids that we could think about incorporating, just because green hybrids, well, has Argomon and Beetlemon to be able to use as well for their own benefits. But again, if we are trying to lean a little bit heavier into the insectoid-based synergies, then we could play Kabuterimon if we wanted to from the Classic Collection. I don't think he's that great, but we also could run MetalKabuterimon as another alternative level 5 to be able to use his ability to digivolve into an insectoid or ancient insectoid, which Shivamon is an insectoid, and AncientBeetlemon is an ancient insectoid. So we do have that synergy there, on top of him gaining us a memory when we're beating up the opponent's Digimon as a good inheritable ability. And then we do have other cards to think about utilizing to try to take advantage of some of our other tech and tools. So if you wanted to, you could think about running Chimeramon as a very easy and generic DNA Digivolution to try to get free evolutions out, just because we could very easily sit on level 4s. Rapidmon already has Armor Purge, so he's going to be a sticky body. Then we could easily and efficiently Digivolve into our hybrids off of our Tamers to be able to line up Chimeramon plays. Then, on top of that, we also have some good other level 6s. The best one for a good alternative generic level 6 to use is going to be Nidhoggmon, just because the Digiburst ability to wipe the opponent's field for having their Digimon suspended, which we could easily get them to be suspended, is still very, very strong. On top of the fact that we also do have some Hercules Kabuterimons that we could think about utilizing to really spice up the deck on what we could possibly do with it. But if you are just looking for a good generic level 7 for the deck to use, then we do have Susanomon as one of the best generic ones that we have, just because Green already has easy ways to climb up their stages, so it's not going to be super hard to use Susanomon, not only just off of our level 6s, but off of our Tamers as well, because he's acting like a pseudo-hybrid in that aspect. Then he just has lots of damage, it can help to delete the opponent's Digimon, so he's just a good card to use in general. And we do have access to a hidden potential discovered to try making digivolving even easier and interacting with our Shivamon as well if we're trying to go a little bit more hardcore focused on what Shivamon is trying to do, because we need our Digimon to be suspended, and this is a good way to suspend our Digimon to reduce our Digivolution cost. But as I stated before, we do have Thunder Laser if we want to run this over Śānti, and we do have a whole bunch of other suspend options in the game to try to incorporate, all depending on what kind of lineup you're looking at. Then we do have various other Tamers that we could use, so we could use Ken just because we're already trying to attack into the opponent's Digimon, and he gains us a memory for doing that, while being a memory fixer, so he could be an easy replacement for Mimi. Then we also do have Izzy and Mimi as a good duo Tamer to try to take advantage of the opponent's Digimon being suspended to gain us a lot of extra additional memory. But as far as splashing in some extra colors for us to use to try to take advantage of different things, we actually do have Davis and Ken to act as a good duo tamer, because we're already playing green. We could think about splashing blue and play like this blue-green hybrid deck. And Megadeth is a really good option card if we are trying to go into that route to just deal with lots of potential threats. On top of blue being one of the better hybrid colors, so we could play Shivamon to help search out some of our other cards, and we could lean into some blue to do some various other cute things with. But as far as the next best color, if you want to go with color splashing, it would probably be red, and you could run red eggs and a red low end to try to incorporate Atomic Inferno, just because it generically works with hybrids to make them a little bit stronger and more threatening. And we still have some other red hybrids that we could think about utilizing as well to try to help round out the deck. But this is just my interpretation on what I think green hybrids could be looking like in BT8, and I think it does have lots of different tech and tools for us to utilize from BT8 and from other things to be able to customize it for various different metas to handle different situations. I don't necessarily think it's a dead-in-the-water deck, it's just a deck that has less popularity than some of the others, and I do think maybe leaning a little bit heavier into Shivamon might be a good direction to continue the deck in. But I still think it's going to be a very fun and very strong deck, even if it is a little bit underrated. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.